My name is Nicola Murphy. Just hello to everybody. I'm so thankful to be here as your host this evening. I became a member of the Women's Art Salon in 2011 when I did the first International Women's Day down at Dixon Place. So now I'm back.
So I'm going to just do a small extract from the play Top Girls by Carol Churchill. She's just such a wonderful writer. Like, she is hard-hitting with feminist views of politics and really is like a go-getter with her views. Like, she brought up so much new things to the theatre and I can't talk apparently. So this is a piece called Vilgrette. It's in the first scene of Top Girls, which is an unusual scene. It's set around a dinner table and it's all famous fictional and real people from history, and the way it's written is just great. But this is a little monologue from there, so we'll give it a swing. So, we come into hell through a big mouth. Hell's black and red. It's like the village where I come from. There's a river and a bridge and houses, and this place is on fire like when soldiers come. There's a big devil sat on a roof with a big hole in his arse, and he's scooping stuff out of it with a ladle, and it's money. So a lot of the women stop and get some, but most of us is fighting the devils. There's lots of little devils round your feet, our size, and we get them down alright, and we give them a beating. There's lots of funny creatures around your feet that you don't like to look, like rats and lizards and funny things, like a bum with a face and fish with legs and faces on things that don't have faces on. But they don't hurt, you just keep going. We'd had worse, you see. We'd had the Spanish. We'd all had family killed. My son, he died on wheel. And my baby, a soldier running through with a sword. Oh, I'd had enough. I was mad. I come out my house that day and I yelled till my neighbours come out and I said, come on! We're going to hell and pay the bastards out. And they all come out, just as they was, from baking or washing their aprons, and we pushed down that street, just like ours but in hell. And I've got a sword in my hand from somewhere, and I fill a basket with gold cups that they drink out of down there, and you just keep running on and fighting. You didn't stop for nothing. Oh, we give the devil such a beating!
As Nicola mentioned, I'm going to read an extract from a novel by a wonderful female novelist called Agra Lewis Roberts. And as myself, she originates from North Wales. She also mentioned, she's very prevalent writing in both languages. And one of my first professional jobs was working on a very small part on a drama series that she'd written called Me Now On. Now this book is actually tells the story of the community of the Ogwen Valley at the beginning of the 20th century, when there was what they call and is known as the Big Strike in the Ogwen Valley in Bethesda. Up until very recently was the biggest slate quarry on the face of the earth. And at the beginning of the 20th century, conditions were so extremely bad there that the workers went on strike against Lord Penrhyn, who owned the quarry. And it went on for 2 years, and they were starving. It split up the community because some people went back to work, etc. And so this novel begins with the main protagonist called Daniel Ellis, who's a quarryman who actually decides that he wants to become a preacher and leave his life, and he doesn't know how to tell his family that he wants to go into the church. So bear with me, it's in the Welsh language. Nid oedd Daniel Ellis ar unrhyw brys i ymuno â'i gydweithwyr y bore hwnnw o hydref cynnar. Wrth iddo gerdded dow am y caban, chwilio'r niw o'i gwmpas gan lyniodd ei wallt a'i ddillad. Ond ni thai Daniel fawr o sylw iddo, nac i'r tamprwydd a dreiddiau drwy got lian. Yn ystod y bore, roedd yn trin a hollti a llwytho, a byr geiriau dyn dieithr ydw i fyma, yn dongron yn ei ben. Yn ôl Williams, Roedd yn rhaid croesi morau tymhestlog cyn cyrraedd gwlad yr Addewi, ond roedd ei gena neb o fewn i'w gyrraedd ymharlo'r Cristol ar stryd fawr Bethesda. Dim ond hawr o daith ac eto mor bell o bonc twlltwn dŵr. Byddai gres wedi clirio lludw neithiwr ar grat, y tân oer wedi osod ar lan pole wedi hailenwi, ac ar y bwrdd mawr, y pentwr llyfrau y bydd rhaid iddo i gael edyn oriau man o bore. Yno'n aros amdano, a cyntau yma'n chwaral braich y cafn, am na fyddai na llyfrau na gobaith mynd i goleg balau, ond bai amdani hi. Daeth nodau alaw pryd blwyfus yr eneth gath ei gwrthod i waed drwy'r niwl fydd o nesau at y caban. Gallai gofio ei fam yn canu'r gan, a'i dad yn mynnu mai i gau yn unig oedd i'r drws. Caos yr eneth honno faich unigrwydd yn ormod i'w ddaw, ond pa mor unig bynnag fyddai'r llwybr oedd ef wedi ei ddilyn, nid oedd o am ildio. Ac nid oedd ganddo ddewis, ond cerdded y llwybr hwnnw ar ei ben ei hun, gan o'r gwasanaethu Duw yn hawlio hunanbeth, ond sut oedd egluro hynny i Laura.
Happy Women's Day! I'm going to read a piece from Yeşim Gülen's play, The Last World. She used to live in New York City, and after 9/11 she went back to Turkey. And the play is kind of about 9/11. There are three main characters and they're in a plane, and then there's a plane crash, and then they get stuck up in the air somewhere unknown. So you have to imagine me literally up in the air. That's how she staged it. Like, people were like holding them up. So I'm going to read a monologue from the character woman. There won't even be a stone on my body. I will die right here, right now, without prayers, without soil. I will die. Years after me, someone will remember me. I will become history. A history without books. The end of history. What if there is no history? What if there won't be a history after this? What would we do? Now the time has come. The time when I will be wasted here, before getting married, before bearing my children. A few hours after I realize that love doesn't exist in this world, in this sheeted place in the air, at the top of what and where. So now I will be wasted. Oh God, please forgive my sins. If I accept to bury myself, will you take me in the bosom of your soil? I want your soil. Where is your soil? Where is the smell of your soil? Nothing smells in here. Nothing. I don't even smell my sweat. I don't even smell myself. I'm up in the air and there is no color. There is nothing. I'm scared. Oh God, I'm scared. I am humble in front of you. I don't have the courage to bury myself. I sacrifice my life to the love of my life and my heart to my beloved one. At a table, during a sip of a cup of coffee, I lost everything. I have lost everything. The last look, your last look. The last book, the last moment of the end of a month ending. The last dot of a 3 dot at the end of a sentence. The end, endlessness, endless. That last look. The last feelings that I have as I see your last look taking its distance from me to come to an end. To end. Could it end? Could we end? The end. Is the end a moment? How long does a last smile last? How long does the end last? The last letter, the last pen, the ink of which touches the last dot of that last letter, the last play, the last sentence, the last repetition, the end of life, the last breath, the last word, the end. All those things that we look back and say it is the last. Last look, last lens, the last seconds that I finish as we look at each other at the airport. To end, to be the end, to end. To come to the end of that last word. Last word. I stop. I look around. But this is not even an airport.
Well, my country's in having a very difficult time. And this is to honor my country and one of the first women that was a poet and was against a very difficult society and dictatorship. The song of lonely voice. In the wide and center air, my voice has gone alone. In vain and anxiously I searched. All the voices have gone. I made a hollow of my hands and flung my voice. I went out and picked it up myself. What a desolate sorrow, choirs of air, of voices not to have a voice companion. In the blind and sunny landscape, in the area of no voices, over the boundless grass, I have been present on paths that couldn't hear me. En el aire ancho y aromado ha ido sola mi voz, en vano busqué ansiosa. Todas las voces se habían ido. Ahuecaba mis manos y lanzaba mi voz y salía a recogerla yo misma. Qué dolor desolado, agrupadas voces, el de no tener una voz compañera. En el ámbito soleado y ciego, en la zona sin voces, he ido por caminos que no me oían.
I'm honored to represent Canada this evening, and speaking of Canada, I'd like to give a little shout out to my very dear friend Virginia Rinchetti here, who's a Canadian actress, marvelous actress, and has done so much for Canadian plays and playwrights, and is a proud member of the Workshop Theatre Company as well. And as Nicholas mentioned, Bernice Morgan has had a wonderful range of achievement in writing, and she also is from St. John's, Newfoundland. And Random Passage, which is the novel I'm going to be reading from tonight, is an homage to her mother and was based on the tiny fishing village of Cape Friels, which later was completely abandoned. But Random Passage is set in the early 1800s, and it's the story of a girl named Lavinia Andrews, who, with her family, was banished from Weymouth, England, and they sail across the Atlantic to make a new home in a small fishing village in Newfoundland. It's a harsh environment, but filled with great beauty, as I hope this excerpt will show. Will spring ever come to this God-forsaken place? Week after week, ice mountains float past. Sometimes one stops and sits for days watching us before moving on. During April and May, people disappear from Lavinia's journal. She forgets to write about her own family, about the Vincents or Mary Bundle, even about Thomas Hutchings. She becomes so occupied with the barrens, the beach, the sea, always the sea, that it seems she is living alone on the desolate coast. That year, hundreds of icebergs drift down from the Arctic Ocean. Day and night they glide slowly, silently past the Cape like ghosts of lost cathedrals. In their perpendicular walls, great fissures appear, jagged windows through which an eerie blue-green light glows. Sometimes, as Lavinia has written, one is grounded, hovering against the sky until some convolution of wind, wave, or whale loosens it. Then it moves majestically on, disappearing at the rim of the world. Each morning, the children search the beach for driftwood, feathers, shells, smooth stones, starfish, and the bleached bones of small creatures washed up by the sea. This occupation, which can take hours, sometimes brings strange rewards. Once, the sea cast up a round stone with the face of a woman cut into its surface. Another time, they discovered the sea-washed jawbone and teeth of some huge animal the children agreed must have been larger than a horse. Once, they found a square, oilcloth-wrapped and tightly tied package, which, when opened, revealed a pristine set of playing cards. They took the cards to Meg Andrews. She had instantly and ceremoniously tossed them into the fire with the chant, "Cards and dice are the devil's device. God's desire is to put them in the fire." After that dismaying experience, the children agreed they would show nothing else to grown-ups, but keep their finds hidden in the dunes above the beach. One day, when playing in the small grove of scrawny trees they called the woods, the children come out by chance on a ridge, a black outcropping of rock that rises sharply behind the cape, and find themselves looking directly down on the tiny community where they live. Seeing it from above, realizing how precariously it hangs on the edge of rocks and sand, all laughter and talking stop. It is near noon, a gray day filled with mist and little swirls of fog left behind by the pillar of cloud hovering now just outside the cape. Below is the fish store, the wharf, the Vincent's house, and the faint web of pathways woven between. All now strangely unfamiliar, all completely empty. Into the mind of each child the same thought creeps. The grown-ups have gone. They have been left behind, alone.
So, at the last minute, I was reading through some short stories by American Indian women, and I found this story that's not short enough that I can read the whole thing right now, but it struck me because it's a story about someone who's searching to embrace her roots and who comes from a lot of different places. So many people who are of Native descent have a wide background other than that. And you're always, as we all are, searching to find your identity and the place where you fit in the world, And so something about this story of her trying to embrace her Native side really struck me. Her name is Misha Nogha, and she's a writer and a musician, and she writes poetry and short stories and novels. And this is an excerpt of one of her short stories. The moon is a fire drum, polishing the anthracite sky in silent booms. She stands before the steel cage that holds this week's exhibit. A white bear with a muzzle of frost. Cold blue light crackles around its spirit pelt. The sheer bulk of the bear punches through her chest and leaves a cave-like hole that sucks her through herself into the bowels of the earth. Still, she watches her hand, the silver key strobing in the starlight as it stretches forward and unlocks the door. There is a long moment of dead silence after the solitary click. She turns to run and is frozen by the sheer volume of bear roars. The bellow whirls her around to face the bear just as it strikes out and slaps the top of her skull off. It's a skull juggler. Her scalp flaps away into the night. Before the woman can fall, the bear sinks its jaws deep into her chest and begins to chew her, smacking and crunching. It rips the flesh from her bones. A bear, hungry as fire, licking her bone dry and white onto the taut moon drum. She is screaming and screaming, horribly conscious of all the pain, the black blood and the grayish fat flying in the moonlight as the bear rends her alive. The bear stands full height and roars, its muzzle frozen with crystallized gore. A small ivory chip of bone spins slowly on the black ice. It reverses direction, spins faster, and explodes once again into a woman clothed in flesh. She bolts upright with a sharp intake of breath, slaps her palms against her chest. Sheets of moonlight fall through the window on the cream-colored Pendleton blanket. Her husband stirs beside her. What is it? Horrible, she gasps, feeling her flesh, brown hands covering her naked self, feeling lightheaded, newborn. Dreaming of bears again? He turns, ever the therapist, even with his own wife, especially with his own wife. I felt it. It hurts. I was eaten alive by a bear, and I felt every bite, every slice of claw. She was breathing in great, heavy gasps. It was real. He leans up on the pillow. His voice is calm, dry, his Mongol eyes gleaming silver in the moonlight. You're going to have to face it. What? She gasps, still feeling the prickly fur in her mouth, the musky smell of bear pelt in her eyes and her ears, all of her trembling. Your native self, he says, rolling back into the blanket, his Slavic Mongol form itself bear-like, falling back into snores of ursine contentment. She crawls off the floor mat onto the bare particle board floor, reaches for a light, a wisp of smoke. The moon lights up the drum above her bed. She makes out the ghostly form of her dun draft horses outside the window. My drum is my horse, she says to the horses out the window. They nicker back to her. In the morning, a young grizzly cub sits by the refrigerator licking milk from its nimble paws. The kids are yelling, "Can we keep him?" But she grabs the cub by the ruff and drags it, bawling, across the floor and throws it out the door. It's crying like a child outside the door, and she feels sorry and pours it another bowl of creamy milk. That night, the bear grows huge and rips the shack door right off its hinges. She's trying to hold the door back, but the bear is too strong. Why don't you do something about your native side? Her husband steps around the bear, shakes his head, no, at it, and sits at the table with his paper, ignoring its huge bulk, its savage odor of blood and dung. As soon as she sees the black bear, she knows it is coming for her. Its sleek hide galloping as fast as her horse can run. She takes the kerosene lantern from the hook above the lintel, swings it at the bear, but it only circles her warily, keeps coming back, not to maim or kill, but to embrace her. Her husband stands silently watching, the red glow of a cigarette dangling from his lips. You can't fight the truth with illumination, he says coolly. She stops swinging the lantern, and the bear snuffles her palm with a wet, black nose.
I'm actually reading a poem that she asked me to read. It's not by her, it's by Rita Ann Higgins. And it's kind of about Ireland changing and sometimes people's not being able to deal with change. But it's kind of funny. There's two Irish words in it though. So, Cuchulainn, which is this guy from Celtic mythical legend in Ireland, and he was a really good fighter and really good at sports, so all the lads love him. And he used to play this game called hurley, and in that game you have a stick and you have a ball, but the ball in Ireland is called a slither, and that word is in the poem as well. So when you hear those Irish words, that's what they mean. And you know about Eleanor, but Eleanor was seriously a very inspirational person to me. She played my mother when I was doing Major Barbara. And I just love what she did for Irish theatre in the 80s, because it was a very political time. up north between Protestants and Catholics and Unionists and Republicans. I mean, nobody wants a history lesson, but basically very war-torn time, and they wanted to be the voice of working class women in these areas. And there was this, my favourite highlight of the Charabank Theatre, I won't go on about it too long, don't worry, is that they wrote this play. They started off just doing sketches in pubs, and it was really risky. And then this guy convinced them to actually like pen a play, and they were like actresses and they'd never written that before. But they wrote this play called Somewhere Over the Balcony, and it was just set on the balcony of these really old, crappy flats called the Divis Flats. And they were nicknamed Weetabix because they soaked up water like Weetabix. They were so crap. And they set this whole play on a balcony. It's just three women shouting and talking to people down on the ground. But it's so funny. Like, it's so funny, but it's so relevant and heartbreaking and really heartfelt. And they travel the world with this theatre, and I think it really fits in with the spirit of everything that song symphony is about. Anyway, yes, that's a bit about Honor. And here is this poem. I'm going to just put this phone in my pocket because that ruins it. Okay. Ireland is changing, mother. Don't throw out the loaves with the dishes, mother. It's not the double takes so much, it's that they take you by the double. And where have all the Nellies gone? And all the Mrs. Kellys gone? You might have had the cleanest step on your street, but so what, mother? Nowadays, it's not the step, but the mile that matters. Meanwhile, the Ballyban Taliban are battling it out over that football that will bring the local yokels to a deeper meaning of over the barring it, and then some scarring will occur, as in cracked skull for your troubles. They don't just integrate, they limpigrate. Your sons are shrinking, mother. Before this, they were gods of that powerful thing, gods of the apron string. They could eat a horse, and they often did, with your help, mother. Even Tim, who has a black belt in sleepwalking and borderline, couldn't torch a cigarette, much less the wet haystack of desire. Even he can see. Ireland is changing, mother. Listen to black belt Tim, mother. When they breeze onto the pitch like some Namibian gods, the local girls wet themselves. They say in a hurry, oh my God, oh my God. That's not good for your sons, mother. Who claim to have invented everything, from the earwig to the schlither. They were used to seizing Cynthia's hips, looking into her eyes and saying, I'm Johnny come lately, love me. And now the Namibian gods and the Ballyban Taliban are bringing the local yokels to their menacing senses and scoring more goals than Cú Chulainn. Ireland is changing, mother. Tell yourself. Tell your sons.
Tonight, I would like to introduce mothers. Yes, mothers who lives in Makihama, seashore over there, peninsula, which is a fishery village in Ishinomaki City, Miyagi Prefecture, in Tohoku region. Tohoku region is the northeast of Honshu. It's the biggest island of Japan, and Miyagi Prefecture is facing the Pacific Ocean. Sorry. The Oshika Peninsula project from the northern coastline of the prefecture. So picture number 2. Can you see? So they are new and inspirational artists for me, whom I look up to now. I admire them, their strength and passion. Their handmade art craft called Oshika, which I'm wearing today. Wow. Can you see? you think it's made from?
Shell?
Looks like plastic.
Seaweed.
Seaweed? This made from a deer horn. Oshika, shika means deer in Japanese. They pick it up from a beach and street, wherever in Makihama. So deer is a symbol of ritual and life and energy in ancient Japan. So that thin string like this, it's the fish net actually, which is used to restore broken large fish net for fishing. So why did they start making this? This story goes back to 3 years ago. Not sure how many of you knows what happened in Japan 3 years ago. This area, Oshika Peninsula, damaged by the tsunami and earthquake severely on March 11th in 2011, 3 years ago. Again, why did they start making this? Why women? One of the reasons is the problem of job loss. Most of the facility and seaport have been destroyed by 9.0 magnitude earthquake and tsunami. Before this disaster happened, wife of a fisherman in Oshika Peninsula used to work at the seaport facility by doing seafood processing job and such as seaweed packing and sharking oysters. But usually fishermen could restart working through temporary employment by the government, such as cleaning up the debris and restarting fishing again by buying or repairing their ships. But for women, it took longer time to have a place to work. One more thing, their living condition has been changed. Those who lost their house had to move temporary housing, staying at the small temporary housing without going out to work. Having such a passion and using local material by local women, this is a great example, not only making creative art, this is one of the great ways to rebuild and reconstruct the community. Our job creation also influences lots of peoples.
Well, firstly, it's a hard and tough act to follow women speak. I co-produced it along with the international committee where I co-chair, and I'm just so proud of our ladies and and furthermore, of course, happy International Women's Day. Я хочу поздравить всех женщин 8 марта. That's, I just said it in Russian, just so you can hear. And I'd like to thank Heidi very much for this. It's a beautiful collaboration. This, in fact, is a symphony of women's voices, and they're very united. And thank you, Nicola Murphy, of course. Ireland has a beautiful voice. I've always known it, even from Russia. So I basically, Marina Tsvetaeva, we've heard a little bit about. She was a tragic figure. I had the pleasure of writing a play about her entitled The Past is Still Ahead, basically based on her life, and in particular the last day of her life, which occurred in 1941. She was exiled to the Tatarstan region of Siberia, which is a remote region. She was hounded there by the Russian secret police. They were quite unhappy because she wrote candid staccato verse, and the verse was about impassioned love for both men and women. She was a bisexual woman. It was hard for her, as you can imagine, at that period in Russian time. It would probably be hard for her in Russia today. But this poem I had chosen was not really translated ever. I couldn't really find any translation, although in the 1970s it was used for a film and written as a musical piece. Also, if you'd like to know, Marina Tsvetaeva's poems were also written into music by Dmitry Shostakovich, which is one of our very famous composers. And he transcribed 10 volumes of poems into symphonies, speaking about Salon symphony. So I will read you a refrain in Russian, to the best of my ability, and then I'll go on and say it in English. So here it goes. Мне нравится, что вы больны на мой. Мне нравится, что я больна не вами. Что никогда тяжелый шар земной не уплывает под нашими ногами. Мне нравится, что можно быть смешной, распущенной и не играть словами, и не краснеть удушливой волной, слегка закрывшись руками. Мне нравится, что вы больны не мной. Мне нравится, что я больна не вами. Что никогда тяжелый шар земной не уплывет под нашими ногами.
Thank you so much for having us. We're thrilled to be in a room with so many powerful, inspiring women. Thank you for Nicola and Heidi. And I guess you could say something in Bulgarian to welcome everyone.
Здравейте всички! Ние сме ужасно голяма чест за нас да бъдем тук сред толкова разкошни професионалисти и актьори. Благодарим, Никола, че ни имаш и ни покани.
Alright, so we'll read one poem which is one of her most famous poems. It's called Write Each of Your Poems as If It Were Your Last. Write each of your poems as if it were your last. In this century, saturated with stordom, changed with terrorism, flying with supersonic speed, death comes with terrifying sadness. Send each of your words like a letter before execution, a call carved on a prison wall. You have no right to lie, no right to play pretty little games. You simply won't have time to correct your mistakes. Write each of your poems mercilessly with blood, as if it were your last.
I will be the Bulgarian voice. Пустиня. Родена за любов бях, да давам и да получавам. Но ето животът ми премина без обичана да съм. Дори през пустините, които преминавах, погледнах благосклонно, а само ги попитах, за коя градина сте били родени?
And I will read it in English. This is one of her other poems called Desert. I was born for love, to give and to receive it. Yet my life has passed almost without loving, so I've learned forgiving. Even the deserts I have crossed, I felt no scorn for. I just asked them with astonished eyes, what gardens were you born for?
But we aren't supposed to talk about famous people like Johannes Becker. So instead, I thought, what could be more beautiful than remembering our mothers, that each and every one of us, or at least I assume that we all heard our mother's voice singing to us as children. And I, for one, love the things my mother sang for me. So the first one, and these are not operatic at all, the first one I'm going to do for you is the prayer that my mother sang to me, which I loved the very, very most. And I hope I don't cry, because it's impossible to sing if you cry. But I will tell you, the words are very much like Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. It's Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. I pray that the Lord will watch over me as I sleep. And if I've done anything wrong today, I pray that the Lord will wash my sins away. And it's in German, even though my mother's language was Schweizerdeutsch. The Schweizerdeutsch people also speak German. I want to sing it a little key. Let's see. Okay. Müde bin ich geht zur Ruhe, schließe meine Augen zu. Vater, lass die Augen dein über meine Wette sein. Hab ich Unrecht heut getan, sieh es, lieber Vater, an. Deine Gnade und Christi Blut machet Schaden. Nice. Now the other one is quite different. The other one is a fun little song sung in the mountains. And you know, the funny thing is, my mother always sang this song. She said, oh, that's a nothing song. And I never learned the last line of it, the words. And I saw it everywhere. Every Swiss person I knew, I'd say, do you know this song? Do you know the last line? And then suddenly, I asked my great aunt, 97 years old, still drives, goes to the gym 3 times a day, goes online, and I asked her and she knew the last line. So now I can sing this song, which means, my sweetheart is coming. My sweetheart is coming. I hear him on the stones. Oh, and I can't wait till he's here because I'm home alone. Let's see. Me Schatzli kommt. Oh my goodness, I need my water. I'll take a little bit. Huh? Yes, yes. Oh, thank you. I drank all that I had, and I really need it. Thank you, thank you. Me Schatzli kommt, ich höre nun. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Let me see what I can do about it.
It's all right.
Me Schatzli kommt, me Schatz. Let's try it higher. Let's see if that's the sprawl goes with it. Me Schatzli kommt, ich höre nun die Steine. Weidli kommt, ich bin allein daheim. Mir Schatzli kommt, ich höre nur die Steine. Komm, Weidli kommt, ich bin allein daheim. Jodelei, 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 hey, hey, hey.
Was the secret police in East Germany, very repressive. There will be a lot of Stasi. I met Carola about 6 years ago in Potsdam, outside of Berlin, and I photographed her for a portrait series, and this was taken in the Stasi headquarters and prisons that had been turned into a museum at the time. So that's Carola. few more photos. That was a cell, like a cell outside that just had a fence on top, so people were held there pretty much outside in the winter for certain periods of time. It's another photo where pretty drab. So I just want to read this. It's not anything she wrote, although she's a writer now, but I feel she's such an important figure in recent German history that people should really know what she did, and so she played a major role in why the wall came down. I'm honored to present my friend Carola Stabe to you tonight. She's a key figure in recent German history, played a major role in helping to bring the Berlin Wall down. Carola was born in 1955 in East Germany, despite the fact, or maybe because her parents were high-ranking party officials, she resisted the regime throughout her adult life. In 1988, she began to build a network of environmental groups in order to provide a legal platform to assemble people who were opposed to the government. She managed to organize a public gathering of 3,000 people in June '89, an unheard of thing until then, because gatherings were just forbidden. She had her children handwrite 300 invitations that would look like children's birthday party invites to minimize the risk that the mail would get caught by the Stasi. It was normal procedure then that phones were tapped and mail would get opened. The info about the event was then spread by word of mouth, so eventually 3,000 people showed up and were able to meet and exchange themselves amongst each other. She became a founding member of East Germany's Green Party and organized another large gathering in October '89. Representatives of the assembled groups signed a declaration, the first of its kind, expressing the need for political changes and human rights in East Germany, which in the following weeks started a nationwide uproar for more freedom. In response to that, the government announced that it would issue travel permits for everyone, a move intended to quiet the public down, but instead caused an instant mass exodus, which then became the fall of the wall. So everybody started to leave instantly. Soon after that, Carola took leading part in the occupation of the Stasi headquarters and prisons in Potsdam. She just walked in and just told the people to leave. It was a very strange period of time then, and she opened a cafe in there just because she could. Her election into the federal board of the Green Party was prevented, though, by the wrongful allegation that she had worked for the Stasi. The allegations were made by a man who was later exposed as a Stasi agent himself. On top of that, after she could get access to her files in the vast Stasi archives, which then people afterwards could go into the archives and find their own files, she found out that her husband and father of one of her 3 children was an informant for the Stasi and had been spying on her for years. In 1994, she got involved in fighting against right-wing extremism, and in 2011, she founded the Association of the Persecuted of the Stasi System. Carola wrote a screenplay about her story. It was awarded a grant by the EU Film Board in 2007, but she hasn't been able to get it produced yet because many key positions are still occupied by former Stasi officers who are against the disclosure of recent East German history. Now they're trying to get it produced in Hollywood, and there's actually a good chance that it will. And presently she's also writing a book about a method called disintegration, developed, taught, and used by the Stasi to silence opponents by systematically driving them crazy.
I'm learning about this artist at this time, just as you are. So Liu Xia is known as the wife of imprisoned Chinese Nobel Prize winner Liu Xiaobo. And she's been under house arrest since 2011 without being charged with any crime. You can see there that she shaved her head. It's because she said she'll start growing her hair until everyone in China is free to express themselves. She These works she created while her husband was in labor re-education camp from 1996 to 1999. It's her Ugly Baby series. That's her husband, Liu Xiaobo, right there, and the dolls represent the people of China. I think we have, and I think this photograph is representing the struggle of the people who wants to speak but couldn't, and things are forbidden. I am going to read 2 poems by her. The first one, I'm going to read it in English first and then in Chinese, and the second one will just be in English. It's a short one. The first one is untitled. Is it a tree? It's me, alone. Is it a winter tree? It's always like this, all year round. Where are the leaves? The leaves are farther away. Why draw a tree? I like how it stands. Aren't you tired of being a tree your whole life? Even when exhausted, I want to stand. Is there anyone with you? There are birds. I don't see any. Listen to the sound of fluttering wings. Wouldn't it be nice to draw birds on the tree? I'm too old to see, blind. Perhaps you don't know how to draw a bird at all. You're right, I don't know how. You're an old, stubborn tree. I am. Now in Chinese. 无题。你是一棵树吗？这是我，一个人。它是冬天的树吗？它一年四季都是这样。叶子呢？叶子在视线以外。为什么画树呢？喜欢它站立的姿势。做树活一辈子很累吧？累也要站着。没有人来陪伴你。有鸟儿啊。看不到鸟啊，听那翅膀飞舞的声音。在树上画鸟会很好看吧？我又老又瞎，看不到了。你根本不会画鸟。是的，我不会。你是一棵又老又笨的树。我是。
So when I first learned about or heard about Taslima when I was young, it seemed like everything she said or talked about or wrote about was so controversial and hush-hush. And so when I grew up and read about her, I was like, wait, what? All she's talking about is the truth. But then I realized you can be a woman and be a truth teller in a country like Bangladesh. And so she was considered a rebel for telling the truth and forced to leave her country. These are 2 of her books that were banned. Most of her work were banned in Bangladesh and India. And so I'm really happy to have this platform to be able to, represent her and her work. I'm going to start with reading a tweet. She had tweeted 21st century about in reference to International Women's Day. She said, if women were not oppressed by patriarchy, religion, misogynistic culture, and tradition, we both women and men could have celebrated Humans Day today. I'm going to read a few more words of her, I think this kind of tells you who she is. Humankind is facing one uncertain future. The probability of new kinds of rivalry and conflict looms large. In particular, the conflict is between 2 different ideas, secularism and fundamentalism. I don't agree with those who think the conflict is between religions or between East and the West. To me, this conflict is basically between rational, logical thinking and irrational blind faith. to me, this is a conflict between modernity and anti-modernism. While some strive to go forward, others strive to go backward. This is a conflict between innovation and tradition, between those who value freedom and those who do not. Written by Taslima Nasrin. I'm going to read a few of her poetry from different state of her lives. This is one of the poems that was written when Taslima was forced to live in confinement in an undisclosed location in Delhi, India, from 22nd November 2007 to 19th March 2008. These poems are called Prisoner's Poems. The room in which I'm forced. The room in which I now live has a closed window, a window that I cannot open at will. The window is covered with a heavy curtain that I cannot move at will. I live in a room now, where I can't open the door at will, can't cross the threshold. I live in a room where the only other living inhabitants are two sickly lizards on the wall. No man or any creatures resembling a man is allowed here. I live in a room where I find it a great strain to breathe. There's no sound around but for banging your head against the wall. Nobody else in the world watches except the couple of lizards. They watch with eyes wide open. Who knows if they feel the pain? Maybe they feel it. Do they too cry when I cry? I live in a room where I don't want to live. A room where I'm forced to live. A room where democracy forces me to live for days unending. In a room in the dark, in certitude with a threat hanging, in pain, breathing with difficulty. Democracy forces me to live. In a room where secularism drains me away of life drop by drop. In a room, my dear India forces me. I don't know if all these over-busy men or creatures that look like men will have a couple of seconds to spare to turn to the lifeless lump that comes out of the room someday. A rotten, greasy lump, a lump of bones. Will death be released? It's death, perhaps, that sets one free. Free at last to cross the threshold. The lizards will stare away the whole day. Maybe they will feel sad. Someone will bury me, maybe a government man, wrapped in a flag of democracy in the soil of my dear India. I'll find a home there at last, with no threshold to cross. I'll find a home there where breathing will be easy. I'm going to read another poem that she wrote when she was in love. And these poems are called It's Your Love or Heap of Trash. And there are a few words before the poem. I've not loved much in my life. Many men have found me unlovable, as I don't have many of the traits that orthodox men expect in women. Despite it, I've gone and fallen in love with men who have been staunch believer in male domination, and have consequently been very badly hurt for the very right reasons. In love with loveless men of a loveless city, I have penned many poems. In this world of selfishness, greed, violence, and war, when love among human beings has dried up or is drying fast, my pure, unmixed love and my intense passion are my biggest assets. When the realization has dawned, I have always come back to my own self, come back to the endless questions life has handed down. For how long would I go on loving you, Aranya? For how many days would you go on loving like this? Tell. Someday a human being comes face to face with his own self. If a little bit of a human self remains alive anywhere inside, he searches and brings it out. On with the debauchery, the betrayal, telling innumerable lies. Someday he gets tired, speaks out the truth. Man comes to suffer one day cries. A day like that never comes in your life, Aranya.